JD, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and please hit like, and I'm calling this Crazy Tool Time. So the first tool here, I believe, is for removing roller tables. I'm almost positively sure it's for removing roller tables. So this part here is the punch for removing the roller table. So you'd fit the roller table into the slot here and you'd push down on it to punch out that roller table. Then if you're looking at a smaller watch and one of these smaller grooves, you loosen this screw here and you're able to pull this out and rotate that to another position. They've got handy dandy numbers here on the side, so you'd rotate it to, say, one of the smaller gaps here like that, and then just tighten that up, and nice and snug, perfectly aligned. And once you've got it aligned like that, you put the balance in there to remove the roller table. Do I have a balance to look at? Not quite sure. Let me see if I can find one. Yeah, of course I have a balance. Go to my department of balances, and then all I need to do is slide this in the proper slot, and I'm not sure if this is the proper slot or it's a different slot, but if I throw that in there like that, it is not going into the slot. So this is obviously not the right slot for this. Also, the angle looks kind of odd there because it's kind of off just slightly, but if I look at another one of these, see if I can throw it down there like this one here, this one looks like it's fitting and it's actually holding the roller table quite well. So let's rotate it to this one and see if there's an alignment here. Rotate it, pull it out, push it over, and there's definitely an indent to make sure that's in the right slot when you do this. So the inventors of these tools are quite creative. So now I want to just tighten this up a bit like that, and then I'm really concerned now with mating it up. So you would have it like this, and then you'd move this closer to the end here, as you can see, and then this is the pivot goes through the hole there, and if I were to turn this, and it would apply pressure to the balance staff and the roller table would push out. So that's that part. And then this thing also comes, let me just move the roller, the balance here, and it also comes with a cute little storage area here, and guess what, it's got another punch out. So if I throw that out, I'm able to exchange the one that's in here now. I just simply reel that all the way back, and you can see the hole there, and exchange it for this one. And this one has a bit of a bigger hole, I believe, on the end. So I exchange it for the one with the bigger hole, and we're good to go. Good Lord, I got to cut my thumbnail. Good for winding and mainsprings, though. So that's tool number one. It's a kind of a unique thing, likely made in France. The French people make some crazy stuff, but they host Olympics really well. So good for you, French people. So that's the tool there. And I think it's wide enough for the practitioner, the watchmaker, to actually squeeze that into a vise right there. I just grab that in the vise and hold that like that in the vise, and then you'd be able to use that tool to punch out a roller table. Alright, crazy tool number two here. What is this? Guess what? It looks like another roller table remover tool. Oh my god, how many roller table remover tools does a guy need? So just like the last tool, this is yet another tool for removing roller tables. So here, again, you place the roller table in here, and obviously it's in the way, so you have to screw this back like this to get it out of the way, and then throw the balance in here. And for this particular balance, this tool doesn't look like it'll work. So see that? Doesn't fit. Not good. Now, will it fit this adjustment? So if I unscrew this here and I screw in this one here, let's see if this will work. Like that, and then throw that in. Is that any better? Is that going to cause my life to be nicer? Yes, it is. Look at that. Another roller table remover tool. And again, just like the last one, You hold it like that, and then you slowly approach the roller. Look at that. That's perfect. That, my friends, will work. That'll punch that thing out like you wouldn't believe. And it is from Victor. It's a roller table remover. So here we go. The roller table is pinned inside of this lantern. And yes, a little bit of pressure here on the end, and that would pop that roller table right off of this particular balance. So we're not going to do that because I may actually have to use this balance. Don't know. Well, we're talking roller table removers. I might as well bring out my favorite device, which is this one right here. And the way this one works is that you put the balance in, you select which one of these little V-shaped jobby doohickeys you want to put the balance in. In this case, I'm going to put it right in there. And then you pick the appropriate stake. Here's the stake here. And it's different hole sizes. And then you're holding this kind of free form, but you're putting this right over the balance staff like that. And then you're punching down on it, and bam, it falls out. The only advice is that you put a little tiny bit of Rodico underneath this so that when it slams down and you've removed the roller table, if you've got a pivot on the other side, you're not going to damage that pivot. So this is a kind of neat tool. I use this tool all the time. It looks like there's some initials on it here. Maybe it's homemade, but it works extremely well. Now this thing here may in fact be for removing a roller table as well, or it may be for removing watch hands. I will take your vote. But I know that you can put this in there, and you can put the roller table in there, and you can press down on the handle like that. And when you press down on the handle, it will apply pressure to the balance staff, which will pop out the roller table. And all you're doing here is widening or narrowing those little grippy doohickeys on the end. So this here I have never successfully used for removing a roller table. I don't think I ever will. I'm a bit concerned with the bit of the roundness right here for that roller table, and it might snap that roller table in two. It may be better in fact for removing hands. Don't know, but I've got hand removers, so I'm not sure if I'll ever use this tool. You guys can tell me, what do you think this thing is and what's it for? Now we're starting to approach gold, Jerry. What the heck is this tool? What is this thing? And it's a strange tool, and I actually have never used it, but let's have a look. Right at the outset, I'd say this tool has got some personality. So as you can see on the inside of this tool, it looks like there seems to be some kind of a diamond setting on the inside. Let's zoom in on this and see if we can find out what this thing is. I've got a pretty powerful light pointing at this, but let me see if I can get a piece of Rodico in here to clean this up a bit. That's not bad. That looks like a jewel, and that jewel, I believe, is for holding that pivot. And then the other side, what you have is a very small hole, so I suspect you would put a balance in there. And if I look at, it's pretty interesting. And there's I think they're called a dog, but this device here then would be used to actually contact the arm of the balance to swing it around in circles. Let me see, yeah, I believe that's what that's for. And this arm also goes out further. As I can see, you can actually push it out. So now it'll contact the balance properly. So I'm going to see if I can load this thing up with a balance and see what this thing would look like. There it is, nicely loaded in there, and I basically had to tighten this here to squeeze the balance in between the jewel on the left hand side and the hole that's on the right hand side, and I suspect this is used for burnishing the end of that pivot. And you can see that I was able to adjust this arm here, pushing it out so that it contacts the balance arm when it's spinning. And it looks like this thing would be mounted in a lathe, and this hole here might be the exact same size hole you'd have for the, I think, the flip over tool rest, or not. Maybe it's just basically a hole. So I think that this thing on the bottom here is putting pressure on the plate up here, and that's how this thing works. So I was able to turn this here to tighten it, and it's pretty much tightened enough. So this is some kind of a lathe tool used likely to work on a pivot. I would not use this to work on a pivot. It doesn't look to be precise enough. It looks a bit old. You guys can chime in and tell me if you've ever seen one of these. What the interesting part is, the focus is that jewel on the left hand side that's accepting the pivot. So that's pretty that's a lot of precision there. So this is a very interesting tool. Hope you've enjoyed looking at this. Now these tools absolutely fascinate me, so I'm hoping they fascinate you as well, and I'm hoping you're able to make tools in your watchmaking adventure. Now I had to show you this tool because it's just so darn interesting. Let's move this balance out of the way a bit and have a look at this tool. Here it is. What is it and how do I use it? And if I look at the other end of this, there's a little tiny button sticking at the other end, or a pivot sticking at the other end. And when I turn this tool, as you can see, there's a measurement down here on this side here. So, and that basically moves when I turn this. So I'm turning it right now, and it's getting wider and wider. And if I look down the other end, look at that. That little button is sticking out even further. So this is a depthing tool. So what it's doing is transferring this distance here on the end to this here. So you're getting to see what that distance is on this side. Now you could also use it, and this would be for putting it into a hole and determining how deep that hole is, and then giving you the result here and allowing you to measure that. And I know for a fact, because I've taken this tool apart, that you can adjust it with this screw so that it's absolutely precise. So this is an interesting tool. So again, you can tell me what you think this thing is, how it's used. If you've used one before, let me know. I can think of a few uses for it, but I don't recall if I've ever had to use it. So let me know. It's obviously for watchmaking, but maybe it's for something else as well. So strange tool. I thought I'd bring it up and leave it in this little clip. Oh, and it just looks darn cool. Did I say that already? Now this tool just baffles me. And here's how it works. When I press on the end of this here, the mouth opens. There's two holes there, and the jaw just opens up a bit when I press on it. So, and I can screw the thing outward for adjustment. So I can screw this outward here to give me some kind of adjustment of how far down I can press, right? So, and there it is opening up. So what the hell am I going to use this thing for? I found it. I don't know where I found it, but it was kind of cool. And I said, there's going to be some day I have to use this, and I don't know when it's going to be, but by golly, I'm going to use it. So maybe it's for grabbing a balance staff. Maybe it's for grabbing a shaft of some sort. I am not sure. I don't think it's a removal tool, but it looks like a little duck bill. So let's call this the duck bill tool. Please let me know what you think this is for. Now when I saw this tool, I said, I got to get it. This is really nice. And what it is it's for holding collets. Look at that. So I can put this is probably a number 50 collet in the end here. And when I turn this back to wind it out, what does it do? It relieves the collet. So it takes the collet out like that, and there we go. And that is, I believe, a 50. Yes, it is a 50, which is pretty standard for watch repair. And if I pull this out on this side here, there's the threaded end that grabs the collet on here. And so that's a handheld tool for basically putting material into the collet. It's also got, just like in a lathe, it also lines up. I do that. So there's obviously a pin on the inside of this thing. So when you do that, it hits the pin. Let's have a look down the hole and see if I can find the pin. And there's the pin over on this side here. There it is there. So just like a lathe, exactly like a lathe, you've got a pin and that aligns with the line here. So when you throw this in, the collet is perfectly aligned, and then when you tighten it on the bottom here, like that, you've got yourself a nice collet that's handheld, and as I tighten it more, you'll see the collet compress. There it is. You can just compress ever so slightly. So this is handheld. So this is very useful for actually holding some stock metal while you're working on it, and you can pick the collet size that you want. Pretty cool tool. Pretty darn cool. Now I hope you've watched to the end here. So this is the tool everybody's been waiting to see. What is this thing? It is a tool for pivot rounder. I love the way they say it in English. A tool for pivot rounder, not rounding. So let's have a look at this tool. There's a bag involved and the tools are in the bag. Now here are the two pivot rounding tools. I suspect they're just different sizes, but let's see if I can get a close-up on the end of this thing. This is what the end looks like, and guess what it is? It's a diamond material on the inside used for grinding the end of the pivot to give it a rounding, just like you do in a J-cut tool. And so that is, there's two different sizes. So let's have a look at how this might be used. So here we've got a bench block, and you'd put the balance on the bench block, and you'd pick a hole that likely snugs it up a little bit, so you've got some stability control. So this is obviously not the right hole. So you could, but you need to get access to the end of this. So you're putting it on the bench like this, and then I'll turn it around so it's a little easier to see. So I'll turn it on the roller table side, and I'm going to find a hole that receives this, that allows this to fall through, but is relatively tight, because I want that to be a little bit tight to use this tool. Now here I've got the a watch balance staff, and the end part here is the pivot. This is an old balance I have, so it's got the collet from before is still on there, but this is the pivot, and what you're trying to do is round off that pivot. Now here's a super close-up of what that pivot looks like. Now when you're building a balance staff or making a balance staff, you're flattening the end of this pivot, and you're likely putting it into a J-cut tool to actually give it a bit of rounding. So this tool actually rounds this off. I'm going to try to set things up so I can actually show you the use of this tool in rounding. Alright, I've got this sort of set up. Just bear with me. And here's the tool and the end of that tool. And I would put that tool over that pivot very carefully, like this. And then I would be just doing this by hand and twisting this like so. And this would round the pivot off by twisting it like that. Let me back this up a bit. And this is what you end up having. So let me do that again. I'm going over the top of this pivot with this tool like this, and simply using my fingers twisting this, which the diamonds would be cutting away at that pivot on the end and thereby rounding the pivot. Now this should save you time on the J-cut tool with the burnisher. That is the intent. This is a Bergeron tool, and it's handheld. It's not held in any kind of a vise. It's handheld. And there's the pivot. I don't know if that looks any better or not, but there's also another one you can use too. It's a little bit smaller, I believe. Now I'm going to approach the pivot with the smaller one of the two and see if it makes any difference. And there we go. Hard to tell whether it's making any difference or not, but it is certainly interesting. There's no doubt in my mind that this technique would be an interesting way of rounding off the end of your pivot. Let me back off and show you what that looks like from a distance. And there we go. I've got my balance, and my balance staff is sticking in. There's the pivot on the end, and here's what my tool looks like. And I'm going to hold it in my fingers like this and roll it. So I'm sticking this over the top of the balance like that to find the hole, like so. And I'm simply turning it like this. And the diamond material would likely cut that. So this is a thing of technique. So here I've got the ball in between my fingers, and I'm using 2 fingers to turn it. So that might be a better technique. And that would be for rounding off the end of the pivot. And these are rounders, they're called. So it's a very interesting tool. And that should be done. And here's what the rounded pivot looks like. So I'd clean that up with Rodico perhaps to give it a better shine, or get it a little bit cleaner for viewing. And there we go. That's, I'd say, fairly rounded, but that's not perfect. This is an old balance staff, but that is what this tool is for. This is simply for rounding off the pivot. And there's what the tool looks like from the inside, and it's simply a diamond material that is quite smooth and used for doing a final finish on rounding a pivot. And there's a close-up of the other one, and you can see by the skin on my hand how close that is. So that is the tool there, and I hope this is a satisfactory explanation of this tool. There it is there. Hard to get that in focus, but it looks like it's a diamond of some sort. And that, my friends, is the end of the crazy tool discussion for today. And let's throw the big one in here on top, so it blacks and blanks out everything else. There it is there. So that is the end of the discussion today. I hope you enjoyed this little chat about these tools. And from my perspective, these tools you'll likely end up using once or twice, but not a lot. I don't use these tools very often. I find that I buy some tools sometimes thinking that there might be an occasion where I could use one of these tools, and more than often I never use it. So I think the inventors had the best intentions in mind when they invented these tools, but there's some pretty standard tools for removing roller tables and for measuring depth and for doing other things. The Collet holding tool is I think very useful. And perhaps the rounder that I did at the very end there for the pivots might be useful, and I might try that. But you got to be very careful with that you don't snap the pivot off when you're holding that tool. So thanks a lot. Thanks for subscribing to my channel. Hope you enjoyed this crazy video today, and I'll catch you next time. I'm JD, jdwatchservice@gmail.com, jdwatchservice@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and I'll just give Sonny a shout out. Had a great talk with him the other day. So pretty cool dude, and he's probably got more tools than I do.